All right, so in Unit 2, Section 5 here, we're going to be talking about ratios and proportions, and specifically how to solve a proportion. Well, before we get into that, we need to know what we mean by ratios and proportions. Now, a ratio is simply a comparison of two different numbers. Now, for our purposes here, we're going to be writing these ratios as a fraction. There are several different ways to write a ratio, but today we're going to be writing them as fractions. And then a proportion is when you have a fraction equal to another fraction. That's when you have a numerator over a denominator equals a numerator over another denominator. Then we're going to be talking about the means and extremes principle, and that is the product of the means is equal to the product of the extremes, i.e. what we're going to be doing to solve a proportion is cross multiplying. Now what we mean by when we're talking about the means are these two numbers right here. Those are the means, and we're going to cross multiply those, and we get 42. The extremes are these two numbers here. Take 2 times x and we get 2x. How do you solve this? Divide both sides by 2 and you get 21. Now you may have been taught originally just to multiply the 6 and the 7, divide by 2, and that's okay for a simple proportion, but we're going to be getting into a little bit more complicated problems here. So let's just leave it at cross multiplying. So when we cross multiply these two, bring down your equal sign, we're going to have 5 times y. We're going to multiply these two, 8 times 3, 24. So 5y is equal to 24. Dividing both sides by 5, leave it in fraction form. Y is equal to 24 over 5. Number 3, multiply these two. Negative 5 times 8, negative 40. Multiply these two, 10 times y. Dividing both sides by 10, and we get y is equal to negative 4. Here's where the problems get a little bit more complicated, is that when you actually have two terms in this numerator, you're still going to be multiplying the negative 10 that's in this denominator times this numerator. But how are we going to show that? Well, we're going to be taking negative 10 times x plus 5. That's going to entail using the distributive property. We're still going to be taking 15 times x, and we get 15x. So how do we solve this? We take 15x, that'll be equal to, now on the right side of the equal sign, we now have negative 10x, but it's minus 50. Adding 10x to both sides, we get 25x is equal to negative 50, and then dividing both sides by 25, we get x is equal to negative 2. In cross multiplying on number 5, we're going to be taking 7 times x plus 2. That's going to entail, again, using the distributive property. On the right side of the equal sign, because these are always going to be equal to when you cross multiply, 3x. 7x plus 14 is equal to 3x. In this case, I'm going to subtract the 7x from both sides. And I'll have 14 is equal to negative 4x, dividing both sides by negative 4. I'll get x is equal to negative 7 over 2. In number 6, let's go ahead and use the distributive property here. I get 2x plus 12 over 6 is equal to, use the distributive property here, 4 times x 4 times the quantity x minus 2 would be 4x minus 8 over 4. Now I'm going to cross multiply. Now, let me show you what a lot of students will do to try to solve this, and you would think it would make sense, but in actuality it doesn't. What we're wanting to do here, and here's the mistake I see, so don't write this one down, but the mistake I see most often here is that we're going to want to multiply by 6 in order to cancel that out. And over here, I want to multiply by 4 to cancel that out. So let's just throw the 4 and the 6 away, is that in essence what you're doing here, which you don't want to do. Because remember, in solving an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So if you multiply this side by 6, well, you're going to have to multiply this side by 6. And if you're going to have to multiply by 4, you'll need to, and that just gets into all kinds of crazy messes. So let's back up. Let's try this again. And what you're going to do is cross multiply. Well, let's take care of this here. We have 2, like we said before, we have 2x plus 12 over 6. We have 4x minus 8 over 4. Cross multiply. You're going to take this denominator times this numerator. So it's going to be 4 times 2x plus 12. We're going to have this denominator times this numerator, 6 times 4x minus 8. Use the distributive property. 4 times 2x is 8x, plus 4 times 12 is 48, equals 6 times 24. 6 times 4x is 24x. 6 times 8 is 48, so minus 48. All right, so get your x's together. Minus 24x on both sides. Negative 16x. Let's go ahead and subtract the 48. Equals negative 96. Dividing both sides by negative 16. Get x is equal to 6. In solving story problems using proportions, look at what we have. 24 math problems in 1 hour. Jeremy can do 24 math problems in 1 hour. How many hours will it take him to do 72 problems? Oftentimes, when I'm looking at a story problem and I see 3 different numbers and I'm looking for a fourth, that tells me automatically I'm probably going to be using a proportion to solve this. Well, I've got 24 math problems in 1 hour. That's a ratio. That's comparing 2 numbers. Remember our definition from before, a ratio is comparing 2 numbers. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're comparing the number of math problems that we can do in 1 hour. That will be equal to, now we can do 72 problems in how many hours? That's what this question is asking. Now, instead of a question mark though, I'm going to put the variable x. And how do I solve this? Cross multiply. Take 24 times x. That will be equal to, take 1 times 72 and get 72. Divide both sides by 24. And it will take 3 hours to do those 72 problems. Another way we can use proportions, I can drive 110 miles in 2 hours. That's a ratio. 110 miles in 2 hours. Well, how long will it take for me to drive 385 miles? So I put 385 over my question mark. How many hours will that take? Well, instead of a question mark, I'm going to put x to stand for the number of hours, and I simply cross multiply. 110 x is equal to 770. Divide both sides by 110. And I get x is equal to 7 hours. Good luck on your assignment, and I will see you in class.